More people die trying to rescue someone from a confined space than die from the original emergency itself. That's not a scare tactic, it's a documented pattern that OSHA has tracked for decades. A coworker goes down to help, and then two people are in trouble instead of one. This video exists so that never happens because of you. This is awareness-level training required for any employee who works around confined spaces but does not enter them. You're not being trained to go inside a tank, a vault, or a pit that requires separate, specialized certification, but you might walk past one every day, and knowing what you're looking at and what to do if something goes wrong could save a life. By the end of this video, you'll be able to recognize a confined space and a permit-required confined space when you see one. You'll understand exactly why these spaces are so dangerous, often in ways that aren't visible, and you'll know your role if you ever come across an entry in progress or an emergency inside one. OSHA defines a confined space using 3 specific criteria, and a space must meet all 3 to qualify. First, it's large enough for a worker to bodily enter. Second, it has limited or restricted means of entry or exit. Third, it is not designed for continuous human occupancy. Tanks, silos, pits, vaults, sewers, and storage bins are common examples. Confined spaces show up in almost every industry. Storage tanks and silos, sewers, manholes and underground vaults, boilers and furnaces, pipelines and ductwork. Even a large hopper or a below-grade pit can qualify. If you've ever seen a hatch, a manhole cover, or a small access door on equipment at your facility, you've likely seen a confined space. Not all confined spaces are equally dangerous, but many of them are classified as permit required, meaning they contain or could contain a hazardous atmosphere, a hazard that could engulf someone, an internal shape that could trap or asphyxiate a person, or any other serious recognized hazard. These require a permit, testing, and trained personnel before anyone enters. Your facility will clearly identify which spaces fall into this category. Permit-required confined spaces are required to be identified, typically with a posted sign reading, "Danger, permit-required confined space, do not enter," or through your facility's equivalent warning system. If you see this signage, or any hatch, tank, or vault that looks like it fits the definition we just covered, treat it as off-limits unless you are specifically part of an authorized entry. Quick check. A large open-top tank at your facility has a wide opening at the top that anyone could easily climb in and out of, and it's ventilated with a fan running at all times. Based on OSHA's definition, is this necessarily a confined space? Correct answer: no, likely not. Remember, all 3 criteria have to be met: entry capable, limited entry and exit, and not designed for occupancy. A wide open top with easy access doesn't meet the limited means of entry or exit requirement. This is exactly why you should never assume your facility's confined space list and signage will always tell you for certain. The single greatest danger in most confined spaces is the air itself, and you cannot see, smell, or feel most of these hazards. Oxygen levels can be too low to sustain consciousness. Toxic gases like hydrogen sulfide or carbon monoxide can accumulate silently. Flammable vapors can build to explosive concentrations. A space can look completely normal and still be lethal within seconds of entry. Beyond bad air, confined spaces carry physical dangers. Engulfment hazards exist in spaces containing loose material, like grain, sand, or powder, that can shift and bury a person in seconds, much like quicksand. Some spaces have moving mechanical parts, others have surfaces that can collapse, and many have poor lighting and disorienting layouts that make emergency escape extremely difficult even without a hazardous atmosphere. Here's the tragedy that repeats itself again and again. A worker inside a confined space is overcome, often by bad air they never detected. A coworker sees them collapse and rushes in to help, without any air monitoring or protective equipment. The rescuer is overcome by the exact same hazard within seconds. This is precisely why untrained entry, even with good intentions, is one of the deadliest mistakes in industrial safety. Scenario: you're walking past a confined space entry in progress, and you see the worker inside suddenly collapse. Attendants and rescue personnel are not yet visible. What is the one thing you should not do? The answer is B. Never enter the space yourself. This is the single most important rule in this entire video. Instead, immediately call for help, activate any emergency alarm system, and notify trained rescue personnel or emergency responders. Entering without proper training, air monitoring, and rescue equipment turns one emergency into two. Rule 1. Never enter a confined space you are not authorized to enter. This is the foundation of everything in this video. If you are not trained and specifically authorized as an entrant for that particular space, you do not go in, under any circumstances, including emergencies. This isn't about following a rule for its own sake. It's about not becoming the second victim in an incident that already has one. Rule 2. Recognize and respect warning signs and barriers. If you see a confined space marked with warning signage, barricades, caution tape, or a posted attendant, treat that boundary exactly like a locked door. Do not cross it, lean over it, or move any barrier to get a closer look. These boundaries exist because trained personnel have already determined the specific risks present at that moment. Rule 3. Know how to raise an alarm. Every facility has a way to summon help fast. An emergency alarm, a radio channel, a specific phone number, or a designated person to notify. Know what that system is at your location before you ever need it. In a real emergency, seconds matter, and hesitation while you figure out who to call can cost a life. Rule 4. Never remove ventilation, barriers, or monitoring equipment. If you see a ventilation fan, an air monitor, a tripod, or any other equipment set up near a confined space entry, leave it exactly as it is. These devices are actively protecting the person inside. Unplugging a fan because it's noisy or moving a monitor because it's in your way can silently remove the one safeguard keeping a worker alive in that space. You're walking through your facility and notice a ventilation fan blowing air into an open manhole with orange cones set up around it, but no one appears to be nearby at that exact moment. What should you do? The answer is B. An attendant may have just stepped away briefly, or the equipment may be actively protecting someone you can't see from your vantage point. Never assume equipment is unused just because no one is standing next to it. Leave it completely undisturbed and continue on your way, and if something seems genuinely wrong, report it rather than investigate it yourself. When a confined space entry happens correctly, it follows a permit system. The air is tested before anyone enters. An attendant stays outside the space at all times, in constant communication with the entrant. Rescue equipment is staged and ready, and a written permit documents every hazard, control, and authorization involved. You don't need to manage this system. You just need to recognize when it's in place and let it work. The person stationed outside a confined space during entry is called the attendant, and their job is to monitor conditions, maintain communication with the entrant, and call for help immediately if anything goes wrong. If you see an attendant on duty, do not distract them with conversation, and do not assume you can step in to help, even briefly. Their full attention needs to stay on that entry. Last question. You walk past a confined space entry and want to ask the attendant a quick, unrelated work question. Is this an appropriate time to approach them? The answer is B. An attendant's attention has to remain fully on the entry the entire time it's in progress. Even a few seconds of distraction could mean missing a critical sign of trouble. Save non-urgent questions for later and only approach an attendant during active entry if it's genuinely an emergency. Let's lock these in. Rule 1. Never enter a confined space you're not authorized to enter, even in an emergency. Rule 2. Respect all warning signs, barricades, and attendants. Rule 3. Know how to raise an alarm before you ever need it. Rule 4. Never move, disturb, or remove ventilation, monitoring, or rescue equipment. 4 rules, simple, absolute, and designed to keep you and everyone around you safe. If you're ever unsure whether a space qualifies as a confined space, whether an entry is properly authorized, or what to do in a specific situation, ask your supervisor or safety representative. Every facility maintains a list of identified confined spaces. You're always allowed to ask to see it, and you're always allowed to ask questions. You now know how to recognize a confined space, understand the hazards that make them so dangerous, and know exactly what your role is if you ever encounter one. The most important thing to remember is simple: never go in, and always call for help. That one decision, made correctly, is what turns a bad day into a survivable one for everyone involved. To complete your Confined Space Awareness training record, finish the short knowledge check. This training should be refreshed periodically, and anytime your job duties or work location change, in a way that brings you into contact with confined spaces more often.